And hi, everyone. I'm Nathan Harvey. I lead up DORA here with Google Cloud, and we always like to start off, well, with lots of emojis. Thank you all for participating in that. And then we like to talk about what's new with DORA. So you've probably seen this before. If you haven't, now's a good chance to know about it. The DORA Gen AI report is available. This came out in March, so maybe it's not new, but it might be new to you. Lots of great insights here, and I highly recommend that you download it and give it a read, maybe share it with some of your colleagues to get a better understanding about what we're seeing today with the impact of Gen AI in software development. Along those same lines, something else that's new and open right now is applications for the 2025 DORA Awards. Sorry, I should clarify, the 2025 Google Cloud DORA Awards. So if you or your team are taking some inspiration from what you've learned from DORA over the years and taking those findings and putting them into practice and achieving some success, some improvement, we'd love to hear about it, especially if you're a Google Cloud customer. You're using some of Google Cloud's technology. We encourage you to apply for one of these awards so that we can all celebrate you. Now, if you're taking insights from DORA and putting them into practice and not necessarily using Google Cloud, we applaud you as well. You're just not eligible for these awards, but do come along and share your successes and what you're learning with the rest of the community. That's what this community is all about. Also, coming very soon is the DORA survey for 2025. It feels to me like I'm trying to buy some concert tickets and I keep hitting the refresh button, refresh. When are these tickets going to be available? If you go to dora.dev/survey, you'll see that the survey is not available yet, but it will be soon. So check back there soon. I know you're all just waiting to get to the survey. I like to remind people that the survey is really great because it helps DORA get a lot of insights and information from our community to learn more about what's happening. But I think that kind of misses the whole point of the survey, or at least a big portion of it. I think the survey is a great time for you and your team to pause and reflect on what you're doing. We hear year in and year out that careful considerations of the questions give you some insights around what you might want to improve starting right now. There's no need to wait for the report. Simply use the survey as a moment of reflection, and you might identify places where you and your team can start improving. And one other thing that's really new that I want to celebrate, and maybe I'll ask Dhruv to come off mute for a second here and celebrate this with us. Dhruv, who's here today and is one of our DORA community guides, is picking up and launching DORA community meetings that are in an APAC-friendly time zone. Dhruv, I'm going to put you right on the spot. I see you're here. Thank you so much for launching this community. Tell us what's happening and when.
Oh, thank you so much, Nathan. I wasn't prepared for this.
Excellent.
But hi, everyone, and I'm glad to meet you all. We might have met each other on these meetups, but I'm privileged to host a similar meetup like this tomorrow in the India time zone 5 p.m. But it is meant for the whole APAC community because, as we might know, right, if you're in this India time zone, it's 9:40 p.m. for me, and so a lot of folks might not be able to join in, especially for the folks in, let's say, Australia or someone in the Middle East. So that's our attempt, and I'm honored to be one of the community guides now. And today will be my first attempt to host a similar meetup. So I'm also soaking in motivation on how I should lead an event tomorrow. But wish me luck, and hopefully we'll have more people in the community with an accessible timing, and we can spread this whole DORA mission together.
Awesome, Dhruv. Thank you so much. And I know in the past, we've tried to hold some DORA community meetings that are more time zone friendly, but oftentimes that's meant that Amanda and/or myself are running meetings at 5 a.m. local time. And that's, well, it's not great for us either. So we're super happy to have you along and running these meetings so that we can bring this to more of a global audience. Thank you so much for that. So I think that covers off on what's new, which leaves me to introduce our guest for today. So I'm really excited to have Dadisi joining us today. Dadisi is part of the CD Foundation and helps lead up an effort called CDEvents, and that's what he's here to talk to us about today. Dadisi and I had a conversation a few months back, and we actually recorded that conversation, so you can go and watch it. I've just dropped a link to it in the notes there. If you want to go read a blog about our conversation and or watch that conversation live. But don't do that right now, because Dadisi's here live, and you can listen to him today while we're here. Dadisi's part of our DORA community. He's actually shared some of the ways that you can use CDEvents to capture those software delivery metrics. And I'm really glad to welcome here today to present to us on using CDEvents. So Dadisi, I'll hand things over to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. All right, can everybody see the presentation? Awesome, awesome. So hello everyone, I am Dadisi Sangika, and as mentioned, I am the governing board chair of the Continuous Delivery Foundation. I'm here to talk to you today about the benefits of using CDEvents to normalize your metrics for your SDLC workflows, but specifically how we're using that to measure DORA events. Before we kick off, I just want to give a little bit of a disclaimer. Because this is a DORA community discussion, I'm not really going to talk about DORA itself too much at all, just kind of match that to like the actual metrics, what events kind of match. But what we're going to talk about is why CDEvents is good for this use case, and why and what the problems are that we're trying to solve. But before I do that, first let me tell you a little bit about the CD Foundation so you understand who we are if you are unfamiliar. So the CD Foundation was founded in 2019 with the main goal is to drive innovation and collaboration for the open source continuous delivery community. And so the question that we're constantly asking ourselves is, how can we accelerate productivity with continuous delivery? Our mission is to improve the world's capacity to deliver software with security and speed. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about this problem. Our community in itself is seasoned. I think that's the best word for us. Our structure includes several, sorry, my apologies. So we're still a fairly new foundation, but our global focus is the SDLC lifecycle. And like I said, we are a seasoned group of professionals who have been in the DevOps community for quite some time, tool builders, working on some tools that you're probably really familiar with. If you're in the DevOps community, our tools include things like Jenkins, Jenkins-S, Ortelius, Spinnaker, which I'm also on the Spinnaker TOC, Screwdriver, CD, and currently Tekton. This focus, like I said, it's a seasoned group of tools, and so we think about ourselves in a way that's like, not just are we trying to solve the integration problems of today, but how do we start to get about the next set of problems that are coming down the pipe? And this, of course, led to the creation of CDEvents. And our CDEvents group is really focused on normalizing continuous delivery. So CDEvents defines a common language for CI/CD ecosystems. We are trying to decouple all of the pipeline descriptions and kind of normalize that language. What I've noticed over time, and I'm sure you have if you are in the community, is that now we have a lot of different expressions for what is basically just a pipeline, an orchestrator. You know, our tools are orchestration tools, and we understand that, but we've come up with terms like supply chain security, and you know, we've got the SBOMs and the salsas, and also all of these different tools that speak different languages. They push their events out, because eventing is, of course, a standard portion of orchestration systems, but all of those events come out in different languages. So if you're using GitHub, your events that are coming from GitHub are specific to that system and not necessarily compatible with GitLab. If you're using Circle CI, it's not necessarily going to match Tekton. If you're using Spinnaker, it's not going to match Argo CD. And so these are the types of problems that we are trying to address with CDEvents. We want to normalize this in a way that allows you to be able to address problems in your software factories. Now, let's take a moment and think about our software factories. I don't know about, oh, I should probably mention that beyond this scope for the Continuous Delivery Foundation, I'm actually an engineering manager at Apple. So as we think about software factories, and your experience, of course, may be different, but what we're seeing is a plethora of different tools, different use cases, and trying to organize these individual things and measure consistently across your entire factory becomes difficult because you're not speaking the same language. And the problem that we're trying to address directly is, how do we do this? This isn't just about the scope of the tools or the choices. This is about understanding and improving. And so as you are thinking through your own challenges in your software factory, hopefully as this discussion moves forward, we can enlighten you with what we're doing with CDEvents and how it can help you going forward. Why am I pushing? I'm pushing too many buttons, guys. Apologies. Okay, so what's the challenge of a software factory? It's the integration, right? There's a lot of glue code that we use to piece these systems together. It's integration, 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 which of course gives us the scaling problems and information consistency problems as we scale. The other challenge is it's expensive to onboard, because as you bring in a tool, you have to integrate that into your existing environment in a way that kind of minimizes its impact, but it's tough to do. It's just glue code after glue code after glue code. And as new services come out, integrating those and finding those in the right place is also a challenge. So, my spacebar is super happy today, guys. Apologies. So one of the ways that we've been able to address this, of course, at least obfuscate the problem from the average developer, is with the IDP. Now, the IDP is a great way to kind of display a single pane of glass to solve your problems in CI/CD. You can display your entire SDLC workflow under one pane of glass, but the interesting problem behind that is still behind the scenes. We're still doing a lot of integration work, right? We are trying to bring this together with glue code, glue code, glue code. And what we're thinking about in the Continuous Delivery Foundation, of course, is how do we minimize this impact? How do we do this in a way that changes the scaling problem? And how do we make these IDPs tool agnostic? Okay. Right now, like I mentioned, there is a plethora of tools. I'm sure most of you are familiar with at least one or two of the tools on the list in the Linux Foundation landscape. There are a lot of tools. And then when you add the vendor products as well, it's a huge market right now. Everyone is really focused on their CI/CD, their SDLC workflows, but also thinking about the next generation of tools, right? How do we incorporate MLOps? How do we incorporate data ops? What's next with security? Like, all of these things we have to constantly be thinking about, and thinking about how we integrate them into our process. So this is why we have CDEvents. And as I mentioned, it's just a common specification for continuous delivery events. By making this specification common, we bring everything back to our understanding is that as DevOps tool builders, the thing that we are most interested in is build, test, store. Everything just kind of boils back down to just build, test, store. It is very basic in that regard, but it's also really reflective of the DORA process. And this is part of the reason why I got so interested in using CDEvents to measure DORA, because one of the things that is really critical about the effectiveness of DORA is that it simplifies the operation to just 4 specific metrics that you're looking to engage with. And if you can bring that information down to meet it at the metric level, at the most basic chunk of information, then you're tying it together basic to basic, and it just works beautifully together. And so what does that mean? From a standpoint with CDEvents, we can use CDEvents to communicate events across multiple different tools. It's tool agnostic, and this gives us ability to have multiple different types of tools. You can have an IDP that has both Jenkins and Circle CI under the hood, because you're using the messages from CDEvents in an event bus to bring back the evidence store and share this as one platform. This is a very, very, very powerful use case. It's also a very powerful way to deliver consistency. And as you bring in new tools, you don't have to make any major changes to your IDP or how you're displaying and sharing information, because everything begins to speak the same language. And that's really, really important to our thought process at the Continuous Delivery Foundation, but also how we're thinking about the future of these tools. So a little bit about our community. Oh wait, I think I did it again. Apologies. Okay, so the components of our specification include the orchestration, continuous deployment. We actually have operation events as well as ticketing. And so our goal is to cover the entire SDLC workflow from the moment you create a ticket to the moment you deploy it. So everything in between, even the monitoring, should be representative in the space. But the thing that I like most about how CDEvents was thought about and thought through, it's tool specific, not vendor specific. But this means that we can add new components going forward. So if we wanted to add MLOps tools, we can create a specification, a component specification for those tools. If we want to add salsa tools, we can create a specification for those tools. Anything that's orchestrated can join the CDEvents specification as long as it has to do with the SDLC lifecycle. We brand that component and create specifications. We have a JSON spec for each, for how the events are structured, and that spec ties directly to the components. Thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have a community. Our community, of course, includes Apple, IBM, Ericsson, Fidelity, are major contributors to what's going on. We invite you to come and talk about it. We are at a point now where we're beginning to look at interoperability in a completely new way. We're beginning to think about that problem really, really in depth. Like, how can we make this repeatable? How can we ensure that the systems that we tie together are completely tool agnostic, and so that you can hit the ground running and moving faster? Our goal in the Continuous Delivery Foundation, because our focus is continuous delivery, not just in cloud, but in every aspect. So bare metal, we're looking at energy, we're looking at wireless, we're looking at delivering to tools that are mobile as well. And so our thought process is about the entire community of CI/CD, and bringing that together and focusing on that is one of our main goals. Apologies. Okay, so currently we're on CDEvents 0.4. And some of the features that are in the 0.4, really we have like linked services that we introduced. We're doing fast filtering. There is custom schemas, as well as we've introduced FSPOMs for new users. We recently introduced ticketing as well for like Jira ticketing and Asana work going forward. Okay, so in adopting CDEvents, the goal was to figure out how can we build an entire system that allows us to both expand and operate in a space that we can collect the information and also securely repeat an agnostic tool environment. And this is a little bit tricky as a concept, as a thought concept, and a flat slide. So let me show you what I'm talking about. We're implementing work groups, and the goal of the work group is to, from a standard centralized event bus, share basic messaging and connect policy engines to be able to do security automation, to be able to attest the events, to be able to have verifiability with events, so that we operate in an event space that is both secure as well as predictable. And so this is what allows us to use CDEvents to have this base metrics. This connection is the core of the idea, from event bus to operational context. Now, because we're still early on in the CDEvents evolution, most tools are not fully integrated with CDEvents. One of the things that we provide in our libraries is tool adapters that you can run separately that will take an event from like GitHub or something like that, or a Circle CI, and then convert that to the CD event format. This is kind of a stopgap because we're also implementing CDEvents natively in our tools currently. CDEvents is on the Spinnaker roadmap. There's already an implementation done, but we're expanding the role and the scope of that implementation. We're also have CDEvents in the Tekton controllers. There's a Jenkins plugin, and so there's native support for CDEvents, but there's also this need for a stopgap from like vendors that don't support it, as the that's part of our thought process going forward. And how can we provide an avenue for individuals to use what's there now, but also plan for the future of using CDEvents. And so all of this together, of course, brings us to the DORA metrics. Like, how are we matching these events to the actual DORA process? Now, as tool builders, we thought about this from the tool perspective. And as Nathan mentioned, we had a conversation earlier about a month ago, or well, 2 months ago maybe. And one of the things that came out of that was this revelation. So we've thought about CDEvents and how it works with DORA as the tool is what's important for tool builders. That's how we think, right? And so the way that we looked at lead time for change was when a change is created, when a PRB is created, that was the beginning of the process and the measuring. But from the conversation with Nathan, I learned and got a deeper understanding of that's not actually what DORA was looking for. What DORA was looking for is, when does the life cycle begin for the whole process? When are you, as a person who's sitting down to do a task or starting a project, when does that actually happen? That's what the lead time to change is. It's from the thought of going, hey, we have something to do, we have some work to do. How are we tracking that from there? And because this is the DORA community is available, because we are entangled in the community of open source, having these conversations and getting that clarity was really, really important and enlightening, but it also let us take some actions to make some changes. And so one of the things that we did was we changed what we had to no longer look at the PRB as the creation point. What we looked at is, hey, what is the initial commit for the project? And this communication, this community interaction, let us make real changes to our thought process to match your needs. And this is why community and these groups are so important. This communication, this open source spirit of let's get together and talk about it, let's share and collaborate, lets us make effective changes to support you. And this is why I'm here. Like, I'm here to support this community. I'm here to support Nathan. We need your input as we move forward with this, so we can have a better understanding of what information you need, and then we'll give that feedback back to the community. We'll be able to track DORA metrics, not just from a survey, but actually have real hard numbers and say, hey, look, this is what it looks like. One of the other benefits of using CDEvents to do this is that you don't have to, there's no nice way to say this, I guess, but there is, what I was noticing as I was having conversations with people about DORA metrics is that as they were thinking through the survey, there was this whole chunk of things that they were leaving out. And because they leave out some maintenance process, or they'll, you don't really think about that as, oh, well, this thing has been sitting there for 6 months, but the project, started last Tuesday, but I'm grabbing this piece from over there. So what's the lead time for change for something like that? Are you actually collecting that information? And by using CDEvents, you can actually collect the information and take action against it. You get a better understanding of how your entire software factory is put together. So in action, it looks like this. First, a dev would create a branch to start a project. Then when the initial commit happens, we can track that for DORA, but also at some point the pipeline is going to run and you want to queue that and collect that event as well. But we also can collect the pipeline finish, but finally, the service has to be deployed. And when the service is deployed, that gives us the boundary to make the calculation for the DORA metric. And of course, when you're storing these in Kafka, or if you're storing these in a SQL database, you can automate this entire process and generate reports from this information. And so lead time for change becomes the time from the initial commit to when the service is actually deployed. It's recordable, reusable, and available all the time for you. And so that's the goal of CDEvents, but we're not just putting this in our tools, but we're also making this available to the community as well, because we want a consistent way for you to be able to do these measurements, not just for your team, but for all the other teams in your organization, and comparatively for the DORA community. Having these processes aligned in the same way, representing the information the same way, is better for consumption for MLM, for machine learning. It's better for the AIs to analyze. It is the consistent information that will help us improve metrics and metric consumption overall. So our roadmap for CDEvents, not just the .5, but beyond. Like I said, we're looking at improving the event structure. We'll be supporting namespacing, and this will give you the ability to not only have specific information in an event that's tool specific. And so if you're using Jenkins, you might have fields that you want to include in an event that aren't necessarily available in Circle CI. So the namespacing allows us to have in your SDLC workflow both information that's specific to your team and your organization, but also specific to the tools. And we're also looking at something called workflow segments, which is going to be the basis of our interoperability long-term. We're doing a deeper announcement about this in CDCon, but I'll get to that in a minute. We're also improving our link service and looking at an SDLC workflow orchestrator. Now, this is important because it uses the workflow segments I was just mentioning, which is just a collection of events that do a specific task. An example would be, let's say that you're doing a build and deploy. That is a specific set of expected events, regardless of the system that you use to do it. If you're doing a deployment with Jenkins, it should produce the same events as if you're doing a deployment with Spinnaker. If you are doing a CI build with Circle CI, it should produce the same events as if you were using Jenkins. And because of this consistency, this allows the interoperability. And so from a centralized orchestrator that is completely aware of your SDLC workflow, you can create a graph and set expectations long-term, which you expect to happen in a pipeline. That centralized SDLC orchestrator would then be able to query the system for missing events and also expand and add new avenues that you can then interact with. So if you had some code that said something like, hey, I want to check policies, that policy code could live in the SDLC orchestrator. You'd only have to write it once, but regardless of the tools that you're using, you can get that reuse over and over again. So let's say you were doing something with like a, well, no, I did say like a, oh my God, why am I going blank? If you're doing a policy engine check, apologies guys, and you want to do something like gate deployments, you can have that information be centralized, but if you're doing the deployment from like Jenkins, or if you're doing that deployment again from like Spinnaker, the same gate mechanism would be in place for all of the tools that you use. You'd only have to write it once. So that's the purpose of the SDLC orchestrator long-term. We are right now in the process of having those conversations about how this works and what's going to be next with it. And hopefully we'll get it up and running soon. Oh, wait. Okay, so the things that we are addressing is a lack of standardization in the continuous delivery space. So we want to address like the complexity. We want to lower your costs. We want to make this easier to use, but also we're looking for that data consistency that's important to collecting good metrics. We're putting a lot of effort into that space, a lot of thought, and we are inviting you to our community to give us your opinion on the event structure, the data that we're collecting, how we're thinking through what events should be in a build, what events should be in a deployment, what events do we want to have for like just ticketing. If you're creating a ticketing and you're starting a project, how are we, not only what data are we collecting, but how are we linking this together and understanding how this workflow works. We really would love to learn more about how your process works so that we can include it in ours. Our goal, like supporting this community, is supporting you. And we can't do that unless we understand your needs and your problems. So we have the CDCon coming up. For those of you who aren't aware, it's a part of the Open Source Summit. We'd love to see you there. It's June 23rd through the 25th in Denver, Colorado. And hopefully, you know, I'll be there speaking. I think I saw Steve on here, who is one of our program committee leaders who actually picked my talk. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so it's please join us in Colorado. If you've got any questions or anything you'd like to learn more about, we're here. I'll also share these slides and let you guys collect any information from it that you like. And so thank you very much for listening.